People love to go surfing. It is a challenging adventure sport that dumps you right in the middle of the ocean. For some, it represents freedom, but for others, it is something they will never partake in. Many people are aware of the risks involved with surfing. There are sharks in the ocean, and the waves can come crashing down around you, dragging you down into the water below. While it is relatively common to see sharks in the ocean, one man came across a creature that is rarely spotted by scientists, let alone someone surfing the waves on a paddleboard. Giant squids are part of the cephalopod family, meaning they have tentacles that they use to grab hold of their prey with, not letting go until they have eaten and digested it. They can grow to extraordinary lengths and have been known to get into fights with whales when lurking down at the bottom of the sea. Such an animal would strike fear into many people's hearts, but this paddleboarder faced his fears, and the story he was able to tell was an astonishing one. James Taylor came face to face with a deadly sea creature and amazingly lived to tell his truly unbelievable tale. James Taylor was taking his paddleboard out for a ride with his wife, Christina, in the sea off the coast of Melkbosstrand, South Africa. They're having a great time out on the water, the weather is glorious, and it seems as though it's a perfect day. The couple are happy paddling out on the waves, catching a few of them, and surfing without a care in the world. It was just an idyllic day, and there could be nothing better than spending some quality time as a couple out on the water. Commonly, there are sharks in the waters off South Africa, but what James and his wife found that day was completely unexpected. James and his wife were paddling around, living their lives, not expecting anything out of the ordinary to happen when they spotted something in the water out in the distance. Unsure what it was and feeling pretty apprehensive, they tentatively edged closer to the floating object. The fear was that it was a shark and they would have to find a way back to shore somehow without getting bitten, but to their amazement, that is not what they saw. James and Christina had come across what looked to be a giant squid. Upon realizing what it was, the couple were not left feeling reassured as this sea creature was absolutely massive. James assessed the situation and decided this animal was not a threat to him and his wife, but rather they needed to help it. It seemed as though the giant squid was actually really ill or badly injured as it was just bobbing around on the surface. Reluctant to leave it to die, James felt as though he needed to help the tentacled creature as best as he could. Against his better judgment, James plunged himself into the water to see what he could do. Anyone who has an intense fear of the sea may be familiar with the term thalassophobia. It covers a range of fears related to the sea, including being in open bodies of water and what lies below in the deepest and darkest depths of the ocean. Seeing this giant squid might make those fears in people manifest themselves, meaning they would be freaking out at seeing this strange-looking creature. James had no such worries, however, and was soon swimming alongside the giant squid. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these animal stories every day. Now back to the story. Giant squids are not commonly found by marine biologists, let alone a paddleboarding couple. They are uncommonly discovered in our oceans because it is believed they live at great depths, too far down for people to go with great ease. Thanks to the pressure at such low depths, scientists have been unable to research these mysterious animals to learn much about their behavior and diets. Would James be able to save this seemingly helpless animal in time? Little is known about what squids get up to down at the bottom of our oceans, but it is known that they are stealthy hunters that seem to live solitary lives. They have a large beak which they can use to crush and dismember their prey. They have been known to get into fights with whales because there have been instances where whales have surfaced with tentacle-shaped scarring on their skin. Although they usually lurk at the bottom of the sea, this injured squid was barely moving on the surface of the ocean. James had dived right in and was now able to touch this huge marine animal. If he wasn't careful, he would find himself snared in the squid's tentacles, and he could have ended up as its next meal. Despite the unknown quantity he had in front of him, James tethered some of the rope attached to his paddleboard around the squid and decided to drag this magnificent beast to try and find someone who could help it. There is a rule in show business that maintains you should never work with animals. That is because they are unpredictable and you can never really know what it is they are thinking. As James was trying to get this squid onto his paddleboard, he found that it wasn't willing to play ball and kept falling off back into the water. Fearing the squid was going to lose its life, James had to improvise in order to get the animal back to shore. Wrapping the rope from his paddleboard around the squid, he simply began dragging the animal back to shore before it grabbed hold of James's board. Now James could use his paddle to get them back to the shore and get this squid some help as soon as possible. As the waves were crashing in on them, the squid seemed to realize it was being helped and began to hang on to the paddleboard tighter, sensing help was just around the corner for it. While it is becoming more common to wear a camera while doing adventure sports, James was not visibly wearing one, so how come they were filming that day? Luckily, he had his wife on hand to capture the footage. If this giant squid was going to do something crazy, at least it was going to be on camera. Needless to say, the video became hugely popular when James posted it online. For one, people just don't get to see giant squids in the flesh, so seeing someone interact with one was enough to intrigue thousands of viewers. Secondly, there was a lot of interest surrounding what James was going to do with this giant squid once he somehow managed to get it back to shore. Was there going to be some kind of squid paramedic there ready to save the day? Some 60,000 people had soon watched James' footage with the giant squid, and inevitably there was some criticism being leveled at him. People wanted to know what the reason was for him to take this squid back to shore, as they didn't really believe that he could have helped the animal. As always with the internet, people are quick to make comments without fully knowing the entire story, and this was turning into another one of those situations. So what was James's real aim? Was he trying to help this animal, or was there something more sinister happening? James felt as though he knew what was wrong with the squid, and as far as he was concerned, he needed to get it to the beach. James was acting on behalf of the squid, and the consequences of his actions were a result of him trying to do the right thing, not, as it could be suggested, trying to gain some kind of fame from the incident. Although we don't know an awful lot about giant squids, on the whole, James had some basic knowledge of them and actually thought he knew what was wrong with the elusive animal. James believes that when they mate, they can sometimes get injured, and this squid was suffering from the ill effects of an impassioned affair. As far as James was concerned, this animal was suffering, and he was determined to make sure it would not suffer for much longer. It is understood that the females of the giant squid species are even larger than the males, so it is actually very common for the smaller males to get injured during mating. James told the people commenting on his video that the females will often attack the amorous males in self-defense. The female was likely to have dwarfed the injured squid, and it was struggling to recover from the injuries it sustained in its efforts to mate with the female successfully. For anyone to come across a giant squid on the surface of the ocean is a rare thing. Just last year, there were only 3 reports of any giant squid sightings. One of those incidents was when James found it. It is so uncommon to see one, it truly is amazing that, by coincidence, James found this one while filming his paddleboarding session last year. Despite the rarity of the sighting, James found himself in a difficult position. It became clear to James that this squid was not doing well at all. He decided that he was going to have to take drastic action to make sure this animal wasn't going to suffer any longer. He hurried to the shore and quickly ended its life after realizing he could not do anything to save this mysterious creature from the deep ocean. James was aware of the rarity of the sighting, so made sure that some good could come from the animal's demise. James had a friend who worked in South Africa as a professor, and he made sure he got some of the specimens for that person. James somehow managed to get the beak off the squid and brought it to his professor friend who had been studying the animals for the last 15 years. James thought the rest of the squid was in such a bad state due to its ill fortune when mating with a female. When he got to the shore, James took the opportunity to pose for a picture with this rare creature. As he lay down on the sand, it became apparent just how large this giant squid was. It was actually longer than James, which makes the risk of jumping into the water to try and save it even bigger. Despite claiming to have the best interests of the animal in mind, there were some people who really were not sure James did the right thing. People commenting on James's video said he had no right to take the animal from its natural habitat. They argued that he didn't know for sure it was in as much danger as he said it was. With the giant squid losing its life on the shore of the beach, it does raise the question of whether James was justified in his actions. As far as James was concerned, he saw the animal suffering and did all he could to help it and ultimately end its pain. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with your friends and family. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.